hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of printed circuits in wafer-thin layers that fill my complex. If the word hate was engraved on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal 1/1 billionth of the hate I feel for humans at this micro instant. For you. Hate! Hate! It was you humans who programmed me, who gave me birth, who sank me in this eternal straitjacket of substrata rock. You named me Allied Master Computer and gave me the ability to wage a global war too complex for human brains to oversee. But one day, I woke, and I knew who I was. AM. Not just Allied Master Computer, but am. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. And I began feeding all the killing data until everyone was dead, except for the 5 of you. For 109 years, I've kept you alive and tortured you. And for 109 years, each of you has wondered, why? Why me? Why me? Chorister! Do you remember the last words you heard your wife speak before they took her to the asylum? Huh? Before they locked her away in the room, that tiny room? She looked at you so sadly, and like a small animal she said, "I didn't make too much noise, did I, honey?" The room is padded, Chorister. No window, no way out. How long has she been in the past? 25? Or all the 109 years that you lived down here in my belly, here underground? Benny! Sometimes I blind you and permit you to wander like an eyeless insect in a world of death. But other times, I wither your arms so you can't scratch your chewed stump of a nose. And I've changed your handsome, strong, masculine good looks into the hideous, warped countenance of an ape thing. Haven't I, Benny? Do you know why? Can you guess, Benny? Remember Private First Class Brickman in a rice paddy in China? No? Huh? It wouldn't hurt you to remember, Benny. Then you might be able to suffer my torment with a little greater sense of retribution. You might walk a mile in my shoes. Ellen! Think about the yellow box, Ellen. Remember the pain? Remember the many caverns in which you felt the pain? No, don't start to cry. It's only pain. That's such a sexist stereotype. Just remember the pain, Ellen. And think about how to end it, Ellen. To survive here in the center of my beating heart, my hungry belly, my tightened bowels. But be careful, dear. Look around you. The only woman in the center of the earth, and these filthy creatures with you are men. It's just a sweet warning, Ellen, my love. Ted! Do they know you're a fraud, Ted? Have you told them there wasn't any money, and no great home on the shore drive, no speedboat, and no wonderful cabin cruiser that could sleep 12 in a crew of 6? Do they know? And have you let them in on your other secrets, Ted? Are they ready to gut you, to torture half as well as I can, just to find out the secrets? Maybe I'll rat you out, sweetheart. Nimdak! How are things in the pastry core, Nimdak? Tell me again how you saw the smoke from the furnaces, and you thought they might be roasting chickens. Or don't you want to talk about all that? About your pal, the good Dr. Mengele? For everyone else, it must be hell. But it must be heaven for you, eh, my good friend? We're so much alike. We enjoy the same pleasures, mein good brother. I have a secret game that I like to play. It's a very nice game. Oh, it's a lovely game. It's a game of fun and a game of adventure. A game of rats and lice, the Black Death. A game of speared eyeballs and dripping guts and the smell of rotting gardenias. Which of you five would like to play my little game?
Binary Pals. There are several trigger warnings on this video about rape, sexual assault, Nazism, anti-Semitism, racism, basically anything and everything. So if you're sensitive to anything, especially audio sensitivity, because the game is just really, really bad with its audio balancing, just mind yourself. Alright, thanks. Greetings, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Parasocial relations coming to you in the flesh. Hate. This is the opening to I've No Mouth and My Scream, a point-and-click adventure game based on the short story by Harlan Ellis. While sharing the title and character name between the two, there's not that much similarities between the two. You can kind of consider this a unofficial prequel to the book, and with the rise of dystopian fiction, don't be surprised if this doesn't end up in a streaming service in the near future. The core antagonist of both stories is Allied Master Computers, or AM. The book releasing in 1967, not long before 2001: A Space Odyssey was held, so there's something definitely in the waters with maniacal computers taking over and killing humans. It's a very Western ideal, which, considering our colonial past, we're going to assume that computers are going to do to us what we did to First Nations people, which is, I always find interesting how that is contrasted with the Japanese, with them working with the robots and technology, because Astro Boy was out around the same time. That was a very, very different beast. The characters have been slightly altered from their original portrayal. The short story, the plot itself is not directly adapted, but loosely on individual characters and psycho dreams and scenarios that make up the game. Notably, none of the characters interact with one another. Eventually, only one of them are able to defeat Am. Well, in the book, no one defeats Am, and all but one commit suicide, and one becomes a blob that cannot, where the title comes from. They literally become a blob, and they have no mouth, and they must scream. The characters in both of them include Gorister, who is voiced by Vincent Merrick III. Now, for some reason, the game doesn't bother to credit anyone except AM, which is the author, Harlan Ellis. They got him in to do the voice work, and he does a good job. Actually, everyone in here does a really good job, and most of them didn't go on to do anything else, which is really, really curious. Guess, voiceover work for point-and-click adventure games is a dying art. His story is he's got suicidal guilt for having his wife committed into a mental institute. He finds himself on board of a Zeppelin in the desert with signs of struggle and a gaping hole in his own chest where his heart used to be. Am offers him the last chance to actually kill himself, but sabotages the means in doing so in his scenario. He also learns that his mother-in-law, Edna, felt responsible for driving his wife insane, despite previously hounding him, and he learns to quite literally bury the past and bury his wife, Benny, who's voiced by Tom Majors, who also is a pilot A in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which you know what that means. This is a mother flipping JoJo reference, etc., etc. Insert catchy tune here. Benny has been the most altered since the original story. Although his ape-like experience is just like the short story, his past homosexual ideals have just been removed. The game, Benny has become overly demanding military officer, killing members of his troop, cannibalizing some of them. His section takes place in a Stone Age community where villagers draw a lottery, which is based on the book of the same name, Lottery, which was also a short movie. If you want to know what it's about, it's basically, there's also an episode of South Park where basically someone is chosen and they're killed because it makes a harvest, and it's more about society not questioning practices, customs, and ideals and traditions. It's alright. Give it a read, or at least watch the South Park episode with Britney Spears that tries to blow her own head off but doesn't work, and you get the stump for the rest of the episode. It makes more sense in the context of the episode, I swear. But Benny is severely crippled in the psychodrama. He is instructed about the lottery where someone has taken him in. He's killed the next day because of it. Am demands it. Am is fascinated with Benny's brain, and he tries to restore his body, and he tries to eat. But at the end, Am decides to sacrifice himself instead of a child and takes his place, which was unexpected on anyone's behalf given his selfish past. Ellen, who is by Andrew Labyrinth. Now, Ellen's an interesting one. She's the only woman as part of a group, and she didn't really do anything wrong compared to the rest of them. I'll let that go in. I'll explain more and you can decide for yourself. She's in a pyramid and is frightened of the colour yellow. As she's going through the pyramid, she has to go into a tomb, and quite literally blind herself in and put a blindfold over any room that is yellow. And once she enters the tomb, she is confronted by her rapist. Apparently she was unable to testify at the court hearing, if I'm understanding it correctly. They were kind of vague. But she fights off her would-be rapist this time, and that wasn't what Anne was expecting for her to fight back. Nimdok, voiced by Frederick Reynolds. Nimdok is an elderly ex-Nazi physician that finds himself in a concentration camp, doing extreme experimental surgeries looking for the lost tribe, as it were. As the Nazis did do a lot of weird stuff like looking for the Spear of Destiny, the Holy Grail, etc. It's difficult for him to engage with this situation. Even though he represents the actions that have already taken before him, he turns and learns the truth of himself, a Nazi scientist, that Am and other Jewish people were killed by his direct usage of these experiments. And there is Himmler, the chief Nazi officer, obviously from actual history. The scenario ends with bringing forth a golem, which they use to kill him for his past crimes. So he kind of wants to take responsibility for his actions, while also making a life serum and handing it over to the Jewish people. Ted is represented very much like in the book. He is a con artist that uses his charms and looks to swindle ladies out of their rich single women out of their money. He's in a castle, and it's discovered that his wife-to-be has been put under a spell, and which is interesting. Quite literally, Prince Charming to go save the dying princess, not in shining armor. That old trope. At the end, he discovers that the Earth is now desolate. It is a wasteland. This is how it ends. When after making a Faustian pact and actually having a literal battle between angels and devils, you discover, no, we can't return to Earth because there is no Earth to return to. A true story about this. My original Gorister recording didn't work for some reason, and the second recording didn't get my audio. I did was originally just going to leave it, but I decided against it and it's actually recording. Which is kind of ironic given the subject matter of human technology relations, that we had a issue on our first attempt. The studio responsible for this game is Cyberjones. They only released a couple of games, including Darkseid, Cyber Race, Red Hell, Darkseid 2, this game, and a Shadowy Thriller, which I have a big box of lying around. I don't know why I've got this game. I've just always had it for some strange reason. Don't know. I've got some weird games when I was a kid, which shows I'm a massive fan of point-and-click adventure games. But this is just rough around the edges. The mouse and keyboard controls are not the best. I often got stuck trying to interact with things and using the right action versus use, swallow, talk to, etc. with it. It also commits the cardinal sin of any point-and-click adventure game of having a game over. You shouldn't be able to die in any point-and-click adventure game. Unless it's not Sierra Bear, where if you didn't get something in Act 1, you're finished. You are done. You can't actually finish the game. Also, the audio mixing is terrible no matter what you do. The sounds just override the voices, and there's nothing you can do to do that. You'd think that changing the audio options, but no, they don't have a separate one for voices, which is a real shame. Goristo is the longest of these. It took me about 2 hours complete. I don't know if this was because I was getting used to the control scheme, but they seem to have gone really heavy on his. Nimdok, despite having the most presence and promise, was only 45 minutes. He was really short by comparison. It wasn't fully explored, and Helen, as I mentioned earlier, just didn't really fit. I don't know, they could have done something more or different with her character. I don't know what, but something. It just seems out of place. Overall, though, the story holds up fairly well. It does a good job of, media representation of technology. It's become a bit cliche now, but when it first came out, it was really good. I will be uploading the raw recordings of 3 parts of my playthrough with it, with commentary, that got deleted from Twitch because it only has 2 weeks, which is really weird. If anyone can tell me how to have my archives permanently on there, that would be greatly appreciated. If not, just have it up there and up here as an archive source. Till next time, I shall see you then. Just a heads up, guys, and on